And we should be good.
I'm Sarah Dallas, Chair of the Policy and Governance Committee, and we're having a committee meeting on March 21st, 2022. In attendance is Melanie Metzger, the interim director, Brigitte Pryor, a board member, and myself, a board member and chair of this committee. We don't have to ask about public comment because it's a committee. We do?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
1 second. So one thing I forgot to pull up really quick. I was doing so well. I had all my other screens pulled up.
Yeah, I did that class on our Robert Rules of Order.
How was
that
it?
Good. It was good.
Yeah.
So we don't need seconds when it comes from committee.
Oh.
And I told that to the board president before Sarah, and he did it. And then all of a sudden he changed back and asked for seconds.
Okay. Find the button. Here we go. So we have not received any public comments for this meeting. We do accept public comment via email or by phone. The email address is publiccomment, that's public comment, at albanypubliclibrary.org. Please leave your name and address as a City of Albany resident. We also take them by voicemail on a monitored voicemail line, and that is 518-290-6905. Once again, we ask that you please leave your name and your address as a City of Albany resident. We do take public comment at the beginning of all committee meetings and at the beginning and end of all monthly board meetings. Thank you, and you may move on now.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate all the work that you put into this, Melanie. I'm just looking at the purpose. Just a thought. Do we want
1 second? I got it.
Go get that oven. Go get that oven.
The only one in the house. So one wants it.
We don't want burned buns. I'm wondering. That was quick.
Okay.
How did you do that so quickly?
My oven is like literally on the other side of my wall here, so I just turned it off because my husband should be home in like 2 minutes. So
very cool. I was wondering if we want to do incorporate in all of the policies moving forward what the vision of Albany Public is, the vision or the mission.
So we do have the mission statement. We actually don't have a vision statement.
Okay, just something to think about, adding the mission statement to all of the policies. Okay. Because that's why we're here. And then that would lead to the plan of service. Okay, so I see in the policy, the first sticky notes under policy.
Yep, I'm bringing that up now. 1 second. There we go.
Okay. Look at that. That's lovely. I know you were concerned about the negative language.
Yep.
Is there any better way of saying disobeying the directions?
I think I had sent. 1 second.
Not listening to the directives of the library staff.
Give me a second, because I actually had it written down.
You said ignoring the instruction of library staff.
That's what it was.
I think that's better than disobeying.
I'm going to bring up that email just so I have it.
Well, it's right there. It's right there on the.
Okay, I did it right in.
Yeah, you threaded it in.
Forget what I did.
You're so good.
Yep, there we go. So yeah, we had stated either disregarding the instruction of library staff or ignoring the instructions of library staff.
Which sounds more positive.
Saying ignoring.
It's interesting because
right. Like not listening.
the disregarding the instruction of library staff, I almost feel like is more of a statement of disrespect. You know, it's more of an active item that they're doing, and ignoring just is more passive. So I don't know which direction you guys want to take that in.
Let's try ignoring instead of disregarding, because that's -2.
So I can track the changes here.
Not following?
I like the ignoring without the nots, you know.
Right.
Not ignore, not listening, not, you know, so ignoring.
Yeah, I like it too.
And I think the instructions versus directions. Direction is very forceful dictator, where instruction is more.
I like that. Thank you. What did we do before?
I know, I'm loving the whole track changes thing.
Okay, the next thing we're talking about is gambling. Are you talking about doing gambling, like throwing craps in the hallway?
Throwing craps, poker games, and whatnot. This was actually greatly reduced from the last time when I first came on. There was no gaming, no playing chess. There was like a whole no doing a lot of things that we normally encourage in the library. So they had essentially what it was is, and this is always a stickler with me because you try not to write policy based on an outlier or a single incident. But I guess we had a lengthy history of betting on chess games in the library that was happening. And it would turn into fighting. So.
But people could be gambling online.
But so
on the computers.
So up until last year, the gambling statement worked well because gambling online was not allowed. But in the last year, that law has changed. Gambling online is now allowed. So people could be coming into the library to utilize the computers for that. So that's more of a Bob question on how, I mean, so I know legally we can, if the library wants to enforce something of that nature, we can say it's not allowed. It's not an activity we want in the library. But with it being legal, it is potentially open.
Well, that's online, not inside the physical, you know, you're playing cards, sitting at the table playing cards or betting. So
this is one of the ones I wish Bob was here for, or had at least was able to make a comment on, because I'm sure he would be able to give us a little better.
I mean,
do you want to? Oh, go ahead, Bridget. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, with the exception of betting online, or, you know, if you're using the computers for that purpose, but anything other than that is prohibited in the library.
There's certain things that you just can't. If somebody is gambling and doing that, you're going to get them on disruptive behavior, not the act of gambling. Do you want to just knock it out because we're talking about any disruptive behavior, threatening behavior or language.
But then we have to define what is disruptive behavior. What constitutes disruptive behavior doesn't state. If we're just going to say disruptive behavior, is not, it's very vague.
It's very vague, and it helps us in several instances, because if you have somebody who is getting loud, extremely loud, or two people arguing,
Right.
it's what we fall back on is you're disrupting people around you. So that's why we can, tell them to stop. Or if they're, it actually helps us with protests getting out of hand. Like, we don't mind people protesting things, but if they're getting in the face of other people in the library, that's what we fall back on. You're disrupting others in the library. So we're asking you to stop, or to move on, or to.
Right. Okay. So that number one bullet, engaging in loud, excessive, or threatening conduct, that would encompass all with that, with the gambling, because I guess if you're gambling, you're going to get loud because you owe the person money or you cheated or whatever. So
Yep.
I'm recommending scrapping gambling.
Okay. Delete that.
Going down to using tobacco products in the library, including e-cigarettes, I'm wondering if we just say something like smoking is not permitted in the library.
So that's the way it was originally written, and we wanted to make sure people weren't using chew or snuff. That's why, because that was actually more of an issue at some of our locations than the actual smoking. That's why we prohibited the tobacco use policy. And I believe that's also state law, tobacco use, because we are considered a tobacco-free zone. So that's why the tobacco products, but we wanted, and so when e-cigarettes became a thing, we were able to add that and have that encompass everything. But now there's the vaping, there's
well, could you just say using tobacco products in the library, including cigarettes, and then include
vaping,
smoking is not permitted.
like
Tobacco
we said,
use,
it's any smokable or vapable products, because people will argue smoking versus vaping, and essentially we don't want anything where an aerosol is being dispersed.
so why don't we just say that? Using any tobacco products and other smokable or vapable products that would cause aerosol particles. I think you did that lovely.
Okay.
Let's just do it. What do you think, Brigitte?
yes, that's what I was going to say, that just encompass everything, no smoking, including, anything that's going to have a, like you just said, an aerosol, in the air. So
I guess that includes hairspray.
yeah.
In all honesty, we'd love it. Hairspray, spray deodorant, anything of that nature.
Why don't you say no aerosol products?
I think that would have to be a separate line.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I like that.
Okay.
What's the next one we're going to look at? I'm bouncing all over the place.
Sure.
Eating
So
and
we forgot about the under gambling. Unfortunately, there were several right in a row that. So the other one was using, distributing, or being under the influences of drugs or alcohol. And our issue with this is drugs, that term drugs could technically encompass prescription drugs. And that is not our intent, obviously. If anybody's prescribed an item, we would like them to be able to take it. And simply stating illegal would also potentially not be what we are looking for. So
I
our
have not,
suggestion was being under the influence of drugs and or alcohol, which causes erratic behavior, disrupting the use of libraries by others. Because once again, it ties back to the behavior that we're looking for. I always use, this is my own personal example, I always use this. I was once prescribed a medication for migraines that caused me to slur my speech for about a week. So it was, so people are like, well, you can tell when somebody's drunk. And I'm like, well, how do you tell if they're drunk? They're like, oh, they start slurring their speech. I'm like, well, there's other things that make people slur their speech. Somebody could be in a diabetic shock, and that causes them to be in the same situation.
or if they have Parkinson's or Hodgkin's or anything like
Right.
that.
So that's why we said, being under the influence of drugs and or alcohol, which causes erratic behavior, disrupting the use of library by others. If
I like that. I like that it keeps on, that it's disrupting the behavior of others. I really like that.
Right, still reiterating our number one goal is not for you to disrupt others.
right.
Do you want to say something as smoking is not permitted on library premises and grounds?
Well, that's kind of, we actually have a tobacco use policy separately.
Okay.
And it's included in that. And we have it, actually, that is even expanded. It's all library property and library owned vehicles.
That's a good thing to have. What are we up? So
does that work for you guys about the?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to say anything about please clean up after yourself if you happen to spill food or crumbs?
That's why we said, as long as all trash from said food is deposited properly in trash receptacles. We did include that last time.
Okay, I'm just looking at one library policy from another library. And the way he phrased it is snack foods may be enjoyed in the library. However, items that leave behind crumbs, grease, stains, lingering odors are prohibited. Please clean up accidental messes and report spills immediately.
So what we've actually done with staff is staff have identified areas within the library that they allow eating. They don't want it in all areas because like around the computers, because if you're eating around the computers, you're getting crumbs into the keyboards and such. So we do have designated. So what we, this one, we essentially were just rewording because it didn't match the tense of all the other
Got it.
phrases.
Okay.
So that's why we said eating and drinking in undesignated areas and having uncovered drinks in all areas of the library. Any trash from said eating must be deposited properly in the trash receptacles.
Do we want to say anything about the odor of food? Because we talk about smells.
That's going to be a difficult one.
Because of different cultures and food that people eat. Okay.
And that would be very, because once again, looking at this document, it's something we specifically took the word patron out of this. We have it as our behavior policy. So we're actually asking that all staff adhere to this as well.
Okay.
So that's what we try to be a little bit more.
Brigitte,
If we're
are
allowing
you
staff to do it, we want to be able to allow patrons to do some as well.
okay?
Yes.
So I guess that's resolved.
Okay.
Do you agree, Brigitte?
Yes, I'm fine with the food policy there. Because I can't imagine, so you think of, odors, I just think of like fish or something like that. And I just can't think of bringing in,
We actually had an outside group one time decide to fry fish in the library.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking of Limburger cheese.
Yeah. But you do have don't you have another policy for people who use the rooms, right? Room
Right,
use.
food is allowed if ahead of time, like if they let us know, because
But
the meeting
frying
rooms, but
or
we
preparing
just
your own
weren't
food.
prepared for fried fish.
I mean, but bringing a hot plate in and all that good stuff, or a fryer, I don't.
I think we ended up changing it to allow for catered
Right,
food that's been already prepared or something like that. Like we're trying to get people not to prepare food in the library.
right.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
just to go back, so we're okay with engaging in loud conversation, screaming, yelling, or making other noise that disturbs other library users. We're okay with that. We're okay in the loud, aggressive, threatening.
Mhm.
Where are we up to?
Going down the list, if the one that hadn't been identified as the sleeping, lying down, or engaging in activities that interfere with library use.
Sleeping. So I'm just thinking, if you're saying sleeping,
Mhm.
and you have to do this policy with everybody,
Mhm.
if an older gentleman just nods off with the newspaper as opposed to somebody who's zonked out,
Right.
how do you?
So none of these, or I shouldn't say none of these, very few of these result in immediate loss of library privileges in any manner. There's a warning. So usually if we do notice somebody dozing off, we come at it from a direction of care. Like we approach the individual and, are you okay? We noticed you dozed off. Is everything all right? And if they're like, oh, I just dozed off, we're like, okay, well, we don't allow sleeping in the library. We just inform them that that's our policy, and that's usually all it's and done. If there's a medical issue behind the sleeping, they usually address it, and we call the professionals in if need be and whatnot. So that's one that we do enforce, and we do enforce often, but it doesn't usually require anything other than a quick mention.
Okay.
If somebody, we've had maybe in the last, I can really only think about the last 5 years, incident wise, maybe 2 individuals who are repeated sleepers. And there's usually other activities, when they're woken up, they start getting loud and aggressive towards staff. And so it's usually in combination with something else that makes them lose their library privileges. But the sleeping in and of itself does almost never.
The first Sunday I worked at Albany Public Library, the security guard said, we have an incident in the bathroom. A woman was asleep on a toilet.
Mm-hmm.
And that was interesting.
Oh,
that was interesting. It happens.
It happened this weekend, so.
Only on weekends. And she was inebriated. Anyway.
And that's why I say it normally, if it's an issue, there's other underlying issues that tie back to the behavior policy that they're breaking. But if it's just somebody nodding off, like generally they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I nodded off, I didn't mean to.
Well, I like the last part when you say engaging, activities that interfere with others' library use. I think if you put others' library use, if somebody is just, all of a sudden, you're snoring and, you're being disruptive to others, and again, if you nod out, you're gonna, come back like, you wake yourself up yourself too. But again, like you said, it may be because you're under an influence of something else.
I like that very much. And that's how your staff can decide. It's because it's interfering with others. That's a great call, Brigitte. Thank you.
Because obviously, if we have a baby sleeping,
Right,
we're going to let the baby sleep.
right.
That's why we
Because
did the qualifier at the end.
because if you wake up the baby, then you'll have to ask the baby to leave.
Yeah.
Right. Because definitely they'll be engaging in aggressive behavior.
I guess so. Once again, like going back to some of the stuff that had been told to me, is we had a rash of people prior to my time that would actually sleep in the stacks, because we had some areas of the stacks that were quite dark and not noticeable by the staff as readily. That has changed. We've done some different stack layout, and we've also increased the lighting. So that's not so much of an issue anymore, but it had been an issue previously.
So the one thing that we didn't talk about was weapons. Was that up higher?
Nope, it actually fell because of formatting of this lovely document. Sometimes it will reformat when I accept all the changes,
Okay.
which won't happen. I'll have to reformat this before we send it to the full board. So we do have the next one, if we were to go in line, is having bodily hygiene that is so offensive as to constitute a disturbance to other patrons using libraries. So the way we suggested is having possessions or belongings that are of strong odor that impedes the use of library by others, including heavily applied perfumes, lotion, hygiene products that may cause chemical sensitivities.
I like that.
And that way it's not, because as somebody stated, it's not Ryan Dowd. It's 90% of the time, it's not the individual who stinks, it's their belongings, because they're having difficulty keeping them clean. So this takes the personal edge off of it.
And it also includes heavy overdone perfume.
Yeah. Because in all honesty, I think I have more staff members who have issues with that than they do with individuals with hygiene.
I just think, for the grace of God go I, that I'm able to clean my clothes and wash myself.
Yes.
But then for those, I think that's an opportunity too, with the social worker that you have on staff, that they could point out, I think Interfaith has a daytime shelter that individuals can go in and take a shower and, address their hygiene issues at
So
that time. I think they have a washing machine there too.
We do have a list of all the area locations like that. What we're hearing from the patrons who utilize those services and who need them is that some of the regulations are a little strict. Like, you're only given a set amount of time, or you have to leave your belongings and pick them up, and they don't like that. They want to be
Right.
able to see their possessions at all times, because that's all they have, and I totally understand that. I've been through hurricanes, and I've seen the trucks pull up that have the mobile laundry services, and sometimes I feel like the city could utilize that
Right.
more too.
Okay, I like that better. Do you too? Do you also, Brigitte?
Yes, that's
Okay.
fine.
I think, but I'm not Bob, and I don't have his legal training.
Mhm.
I think we could say no weapons. I don't think it's enforceable.
I think we can. I think that's one of the things that I've mentioned before. If we want to say that the library is a weapon-free zone, we are allowed to say that. I think that nothing has really changed in law for open carry or anything. recently. So we've had that and it's been allowed before. So I think, and I know patrons and staff would probably both feel much better if we did not allow weapons.
Not allow weapons of any kind,
Mhm.
except it's non-enforceable. You don't know if somebody has a knife
Correct.
or mace or whatever.
Or they used a chair as a weapon, so. You know what I mean? So, but I think it should be said, it has to be said that no weapons, so it's no, I mean, it is ambiguity, but you know, when you see it, I mean, for me, only locked doors keep good people out. So again, you won't know if they do or not, but
And I'm thinking by having it as carrying weapons of any kind into the library, if God forbid something happens, we do have this board approved policy that says no. So
Right.
I think that will help us. Okay, you're looking at service animals?
Yeah.
no, can we just go back to the website? So are we gonna say no free, no, what was it, weapon-free zone or whatever? Or carrying, that's the wording when you're using carrying weapons of any kind? Are we
I
changing?
believe so.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's one of those, it's worked for us well
Okay.
up to this
Oh, no,
point.
I didn't know if we were using, because you mentioned no free, a weapon-free zone. So I thought we were going with that, or the library does not allow any weapons of any kind. I think that should be.
Because we even have that as part of our makerspace policy, that we will
Okay.
not approve any creation of anything that can be considered a weapon.
Okay.
You had asked about bringing animals other than guide.
Mhm.
Here's just a rewriting it. I don't know, I put it in chat.
Hmm. So I know, so the issue we've been having, and
Or
technically, I apologize, turn this off. There's a mom's group who has decided to start chatting tonight. We have individuals with therapy animals who are bringing in their cockatoos and
comfort, yes, comfort support animals.
comfort support animals. I was wondering if with Bob, like, once again, it was more of a clarification with Bob. Are we allowed to say comfort animals are not considered service animals under the ADA guidelines? Or if we had to state that we follow ADA specific guidelines for this? Because people will say that, and our staff knows the policy the ADA guidelines pretty well of what you're allowed to ask the individual and what animals are allowed.
I like what you just said, that the APL follows the ADA guidelines, and what constitutes as a service animal, or you know, to assist the person who you know, needs it, like you said, disabled, blind, or something like that. So, you know, there is no other, we follow this guideline.
Would it
So
be,
your snake and cockatoo bird does not go under that. So
maybe bringing animals other than guide and service animals as defined by the American Disabilities Act?
yes.
Yes.
to the library except for designated library programming. And I will tell you the reason we had to include that is because we had a meat farm animals program one time and a patron complained that we were not following our own policy. So then we specifically changed the policy to allow for animals.
And what you might want to do is have a link to the ADA guidelines.
That's a good idea. I like that. Is it the American with Disability Act guidelines, or I'll clear that.
Yeah, I think just having that. Anything else?
One moment.
I knew this one was going to take almost an hour to go through.
It's probably the most important, one of the most important policies that we work on, because this is the one that pretty much impacts the daily operations of the library.
Well, with staff as well as patrons.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Has the mask issue calmed down? Less aggressive behavior?
Oh, definitely. We've seen probably, as far as I'm aware, from seeing the incident reports, there have been no mask related incidents at all. I think people are just appreciative that we're giving them the opportunity and the option, because it is still, if you come into the library, it's about half and half, both with staff and patrons.
Okay, the last thing, and I harp on this all the time, have it in large print, and if possible, have it in a language other than English.
Definitely, like I said, we would have to probably have the board identify which languages that we want to include it in.
Well, what are the largest populations?
So let me see, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second here. So when we teamed up with Lexicate, a local translation company, we were informed that the top 5 languages in the region, and it was with them, the city school district director of E&L and USCRI identified, and I think the last data we had is 2015. At least that's the last email I have on this. It was Arabic, Burmese, Karenni, Nepali, and Spanish. Not the typical ones you would expect, except for Spanish.
No, I know there's a large Asian population in the city. If we could do as many of the languages as we can, I just think that's helpful. Is there anything else you need us to look at?
See something really quick here.
And I talked about grandchildren because I really want grandchildren, Brigitte, and I don't think my children are going to go there. One's 33 and the other one's 27. So I might ask if I can live vicariously through yours.
No, they're getting up there now. They're becoming like young teenagers and young adults. Young teenagers. Well, I do my little granddaughter. She's 10, and she's so funny. She's too funny. I guess she had a tall person in her class, and the teacher had something that was higher. So the kid said, can I get it? And they said, no, not you, you're too tall. So then she said, oh, the teacher was tall shaming him. He was tall shaming. She's too funny. So my daughter was like, oh, she keeps me progressive. So, yep,
Give me
they're
one
fun.
quick second here. I'm playing with something really quick to see if it works. So really quick, Google Translate has where you can upload a document, and I just pulled our PDF of our.
I'd be very cautious of that.
But I mean,
because-
worst case scenario, if we happen to hit a language that we don't have on hand.
Because you have no clue, especially in like a Chinese, that it could be, you've seen some instructions written in English that make no sense.
True.
So
I know, so with Lexikey, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that company, but they do on-demand translation as well. So if we ever come into a situation with an individual who doesn't speak English and we are having difficulty translate or communicating with them, we can call up. They do on demand by phone and on demand by video chat as well. Language translations or interpretation.
okay.
Good.
So we have that available to us as well.
Not that I want any challenges to happen to materials, but we need to do that work before we get a challenge, because once we get a challenge, we're kind of stuck with the policy written as is.
Definitely. So I know our head of collection management services, Stephanie Anderson, has been working on it because she identified herself that it needs to be beefed up quite a bit. I know she unfortunately is out of town or going to be out of town in the next 2 weeks, but could we potentially for next month's meeting bring
Yes.
that up with her?
Yes,
I'll have-
please. Yes, please. Because one of the things that I see in it, it doesn't say how long it will take. So if somebody complains, it'd be nice to be able to get something back within 2 weeks or less. There's just some holes in it. And I'm just alerted to it because I'll be doing a town hall at PLA.
So one of my suggestions for that, just because we are committee heavy on this board, and it seems like every time something pops up, we create an ad hoc committee. Since this is policy and governance, and that essentially falls under that, my suggestion is when we write the policy that, because the board does have say, that the policy and governance committee would be the committee to oversee those challenges.
Let's think about that. Let's think about that. The other thing I wanted to share about the policy is it's really important. I'm just looking at it, that we go into a little bit more detail about that it's professionals that are selecting the materials, and some of the tools that are used to make the selections. And before it was like Booklist or Kirkus or all of that. No, there's ALA has a really nice page that talks about books that would work for Indigenous people of color, different cultures, so that the selection is done thoughtfully and not just because there was bias in the selection tools we were using, or what the publishers say, these are your bestsellers. There's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff there.
So really quick before, so we don't lose track of what we're doing here and moving on. Going back to this document with all the changes that we're suggesting, and I'll once again, I'll clean this up for presentable format for the rest of the board. Is this what you guys are motioning to put forward to the board?
Yes,
For
I
approval?
think we are. I think we are, but we would want legal looking at it first.
Okay,
I want Bob to look at it and not say, well, there's a problem at the board meeting. I want all
Okay.
of that done before the board meeting.
so motion to approve pending.
Pending. Mhm.
Or motion to send forth to full board for approval pending legal review.
That works.
Who would like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion that we accept or we move this recommendation to the board pending legal's review.
And I usually don't like to make a second, but I will. And I know we both passed. I mean, it passed, so.
We wanted to make sure we had that on the book.
Thank you. I like it when we end a little early.
That's got it. So are we officially ending then?
I think so. Do you want to stay and chat a little longer, Brigitte? Or do you want to
Well, you need to
unwind
make the
from
motion.
Monday?
No, and I think in the
You don't have to make a
you
motion
don't
to
have to make a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
We learned that. We learned
Yeah.
that last
You can
week.
just say goodbye.
Fabulous. Well, ain't that a thing?
The meeting is ending right now, so
Okay.
yeah. All right, good night.